Would it be possible for dog owners and dogs to help solve the labor crisis? I think so. Let me show you why. First, the USA is currently experiencing a labor shortage. Estimated 1.7 million fewer labor workers in the labor force. They say it's influenced by these things, aging workforce and stuff like that. But I think dog culture is a huge, huge part of this. So, anybody else notice this? You see all the help wanted signs? You see all the on field positions? Yeah, we're in a labor crisis. A lot of information about this. You can go to Forbes, you can go to USA Facts, or you can go down in the description. I'll have some other interesting stuff about this. So let's just gather some facts and read some summaries. So, something that we know: society with fewer workers can experience economic challenges, decreased productivity, potential labor shortages, and it can lead to a decline in cultural cohesion and increased social issues. That's one of the worst parts about this. The more people we have in labor positions that don't actually serve the country, don't actually serve our fellow humans, this is what happens. This happened in communism. This is happening right now with dog culture. Just consider how our country is getting filled with more dogs, which means more labor for dogs. Less labor for infrastructure, less labor for our fellow humans, less inventions, more just running around spoiling dogs on the taxpayer dollar. And remember, dogs don't pay taxes and they cannot provide any labor back. So this can be very bad. So most jobs in dog care, such as pet sitters, kennel attendants, etc., are labor intensive. So that's pretty obvious. It looks like, most of these places, Bureau of Labor Statistics, they recognize this. So we're giving all of this labor to dogs. We're taking laborers that could work in tech jobs, they could work caring for elderly or inventions or working at the city maintenance or working at the deli down at the store or Subway. We're taking all those people and we're putting them in these types of jobs: dog trainers, dog sitters, and even police officers. So, next up, I just want to show everybody this fact. I'm going to remind everybody of this every time I can. The mental health of these poor laborers in the vet techs and other dog serving doctor jobs, they have a lot of problems with suicide. It's a higher rate. For example, we got dog grooming, labor intensive. You have to have patience, prolonged standing, various sized dogs, big ass dogs that these people have to handle. And a lot of the dog groomers are young, frail women. And there's bites that happen to these dog groomers. There's lots of injuries that happen to these dog groomers. Groomer's lung, for example. So once they get injured dog grooming, that's also taken them out of the labor force. They've done all that work for dogs and they get nothing back. Here's some of the injuries from the dog groomer: carpal tunnel, back problems, groomer's lung. Groomer's lung is terrible, you guys. It's like emphysema. It's like breathing asbestos. Hardly anybody talks about it, but it's seriously nasty stuff that they have to deal with. And of course, like bites and injuries from handling the dogs. Because they freak out and they bite and they dig their nails into the skin of these people. And those poor laborers are doing all this physical and emotional stress just so somebody can spoil a dog. While that probably looks good on paper for the gross national product, all that's doing is dumping our labor force into spoiling dogs, dogs that don't give back to our society. So I got to mention communism, of course, because this is what communism did. It led to labor crisis due to inefficiencies in planned economies, lack of incentives, and suppression of individual initiative. With dog culture, there is no like creativity and incentive to do cool stuff. It's just go work at a dog kennel, go walk dogs, keep a dog at home, and dump all your labor into it while you spend your Social Security. And notice this part right here, discontent among workers. That's all over the place in dog culture. At the dog parks, the doggy daycares. For example, police officers, they have to go deal with dog problems. They get called out there. People don't take care of their dogs and keep them out of the way. They have to discharge their firearm or defend themselves from a dog in some other way. And then it's discontent between the neighbors and the police officers. And what are those people? What type of workers? What type of workers are those people? They're dog labor workers, and their labor just creates discontent. Read this summary right here and read up on this concept some more. Let me read this. If laborers are employed in jobs that do not meet the country's needs, it can contribute to a labor crisis by leaving critical sectors understaffed. Wow. So if we're running around dumping our labor into bullshit endeavors, not into building up our country, not into, doing stuff like building libraries and putting labor into cleaning up our neighborhoods, putting labor into refunctioning and reforming like homeless shelters or helping little kids get out on the park. Instead, we're putting all that labor into dogs, which leads to this stuff. This mismatch can exacerbate existing labor shortages and hinder economic growth. That's also like what communism did. It's like Mao Zedong. He put labor into the sparrows. Everybody go kill the sparrows. Everybody go do close planting so I can grow more. All that labor into Mao Zedong's BS stuff, it led to famine. And it's the same thing with dog culture. The labor that we're putting into worshiping dogs does not give the return on investment to our country that the labor of something else would. Build a road, go help maintain a park, go help fix somebody's roof, go clean up some garbage out of a homeless camp and give them a little bit of food or something. Maybe one of them will get a job and become an awesome taxpayer. But no, we're doing less and less of that stuff, and we're doing this mismatch. It's a mismatch. Giving all this labor to dogs, it's a complete mismatch of what we should be doing. So here is the police officer example. The police officer already without dogs is very labor intensive. So now you're going to make them also deal with dogs. That's crazy. It's just crazy. And right now, police officers more and more and more have to deal with dogs. So you're taking a labor intensive job and making it even worse on them with dogs. What is that going to do to your police officers? It's going to make them have more discontent for the dog owners, discontent for the people that demonize them for defending themselves. So like we looked at it in our other slide, this creates discontent. If you're a police officer and you got bit by 2 pit bulls and you had to defend yourself, and then everybody told you just, you need to be fired, and then you get on Facebook and everybody's worshiping pit bulls, that's creating discontent among you. And you already have this labor-intensive dog, or this labor-intensive job, and dogs and dog owners are making it worse. So they say dogs are man's best friends. Maybe these dogs need to pack up and move to Mars or something and help us out. They can take their dog owners with them, right? So speaking of dogs and their dog owners, dog ownership itself, it's labor intensive. You got to do all these things. Grooming, exercise, training, veterinary care, constantly bending over to pick up turds. Some people get injured trying to wash their dogs. Children get injured by dogs all the time when the parents hook the leash up a little tiny kid to a cane corso, and then they laugh when the poor child gets smashed into the ground. Yeah, it's very labor intensive. What if instead of sitting at home putting that hours and hours and hours of labor into a dog, what if you could put that labor into a part-time job out in the community where they have a labor shortage? You guys see what I'm saying? We're screwing up the balance by dumping all this labor into a dog. A dog will never get a job, never pay a tax, never invent anything, never repair a roof, never rake up a leaf. Nope. Another labor-intensive job, one of millions that we have for dogs, is animal shelters. And look at this. We're building more and more animal shelters. Like we recently opened up an $11 million one in Texas. Texas that is full of stray dogs, and it increases and increases. They even have packs of stray dogs attacking people in Texas. But they build an $11 million animal shelter, and it's going to have a bunch of people in there laboring to take care of those dogs. What about labor out there in Texas helping repair a soccer field or something? Nope, we got too many people doing the labor of these dogs. So dog walking, labor intensive, very labor intensive. A lot of people get injured dog walking. And since we're in a dog worshiping society, more and more people are choosing just to sit at home and walk people's dogs to make money. This is true. So instead of going out and getting a job at Subway and learning how to make sandwiches, instead of going and getting a job somewhere and being an instructor or a guide, these people are running around walking dogs, dogs that will never give back to our country. And here is a summary of this, more in the description. So look at this craziness. People are utilizing dog walking services more. So dog people themselves are too busy working to walk their dogs, working probably to feed their dogs. Admittedly, they admit this all the time. You know, well, look at this. There is a significant growth expected with the dog walking industry. So that's more laborers walking around, walking dogs, instead of going out into the community and getting a proper job that actually benefits the country. Yeah, this labor shortage could easily be solved, or at least come close to being solved, if we started to stop worshiping dogs and put the labor that we have into our fellow humans that can take that labor and reinvest it out into our society, not a dog. All the labor you put into the dog goes to nothing. It's just an expense and a liability. And on that note, I want to give you guys just a quick look at this components of the gross domestic product. One of the components is personal consumption. So this is why dog culture kind of looks like capitalism on paper. Because if we're blowing a bunch of cash on dogs, if we're buying a bunch of Chinese garbage for dogs, all the toys, well, that kind of looks like, oh, wow, that's the capitalism, that's the money. But all these personal expenditures, remember, they're not going back into our fellow humans that are like wanting to do things better for the community, creative people, laborers out there that are doing stuff for you. It's going into dogs. So while it looks like a great thing, the personal expenditures, remember, it's being spent on a non-tax paying, non-labor providing dog that mauls your toddlers. Let's look at another thing, business investment. So again, dog culture looks good on paper because they're buying all this stuff with government money. New shelters, new dog walking things, leashes, special freaking parks for dogs to walk in, lifting up the laws so dogs can go in protected areas. That all can look like business investment. But it's an investment like in our previous slide. It's an investment in things that do not meet the country's needs. Nothing about dogs meet the country's needs. They don't invent stuff, they don't build stuff. All they do is influence us to waste our money, waste our time, and to judge our fellow humans incorrectly because they just own a dog. So the business investment that's all related to dogs is huge. There's government spending, there's loans that go into stuff for dogs, but that does not go back into our economy the way a normal business investment would. If you invest in somebody that's going around the neighborhood and maybe they're going to do home repairs, maybe they're going to help senior citizens get out to the park, those homes now make the neighborhood look better. Those senior citizens can go to the park and spend some of their Social Security money on another small business. You put all that money into a dog, it just means the dog needs more and more money. And another thing about this is government spending. The government spends a lot of money on dogs, lots of handout for dog owners. All of the handouts that most people get, like Social Security, they spend it on their dog. Even food stamps, even though they're not supposed to, people have admitted it. So government spending looks good on paper, looks like capitalism, looks like awesome GDP. But if we're dumping more and more government spending into a dog that can never pay taxes, guys, never do labor, even a dog that we don't have working dogs anymore. They're all pet dogs that live in the house. They don't pay rent, they don't pay a utility bill. They can't, the only thing that they can do is influence you how to vote, because if the politician has a dog, that's the only reason that government spends money on dog culture, is to influence you. At the end of the day, it's nothing. It's nothing at all. Yeah. But have a look at this. Have a look at this article and think about dog culture when you see the gross domestic product, and look at all of these components and how much of this is just spent on worthless dogs. Yep. Thanks for watching, and don't forget the other key component of this is we basically have fewer workers. Even with all the other stuff that I said, this also creates fewer workers because we're having less humans, because we're just filling our houses with dogs instead of kids and wives and friends and family. And so that means fewer workers, fewer taxpayers. So that means everybody else has to pay more taxes and do more work. So dog owners and dogs, it's time for you to live up to your reputation, being man's best friend and being such a great person. It's time to quit worshiping dogs so much and start helping with this labor crisis.